Rising is for organizations that are growing but quietly losing clarity along the way. Revenue may be up, hiring may be strong, yet decisions take longer, collaboration feels harder, and leaders are exhausted trying to keep everything aligned. The pressure is to push harder, launch another initiative, implement another tool, demand more output. But intensity cannot compensate for misalignment, and effort cannot fix what leaders cannot clearly see. Rather than offering another leadership program, Rising provides a practical blueprint for building a people system that develops leaders at every level and restores alignment across your organization.
This is the Leaders Rising podcast, creating bigger futures, building thriving cultures. We believe you can become a leader worth following.
There is a pattern that shows up in almost every growing organization. Something isn't working, collaboration feels harder than it should, execution is slower than it needs to be, so leadership goes looking for a bright, shiny solution. They evaluate tools, they bring in consultants, they choose a platform, and they implement this technological upgrade. And then, more often than not, the original problem only gets worse. Our first instinct naturally is to blame the technology or the tool, but technology is an amplifier. It's making healthy systems more efficient and unhealthy systems more broken. The real question is never which tool to implement. The real question is what kind of operating system you're installing that tool on. That's where this episode focuses. This conversation was recorded live during our Rising launch event, and it features one of the most common and most expensive mistakes growing organizations make: trying to solve a people problem with a process solution. Steve makes the case that before leaders ask what they should implement, they need to ask something harder. What's actually running underneath everything we are trying to build?
You know, one of the great things about being in the digital age is that we have so many different technologies, so many different applications, software at our disposal. The great thing is that this often makes it easier for us to reach more people. It makes it easier for us to be more productive. It makes it easier for us to collaborate together. But with that often comes a lot of challenges. Teams and organizations, we see this all the time, where teams and organizations will identify a need that they have, a need to collaborate better, a need to execute more quickly. So our natural tendency in the digital age is to look for the latest, greatest AI, the latest, greatest application. We'll go out, do some research, find one that looks great, maybe hire a company to come in and help us evaluate, put together a plan, and then we implement it. Too often, though, what we've seen is the very issue that the organization is trying to resolve ends up getting worse. There's a saying in marketing. It goes something like this: good marketing helps a great product soar quickly. But the other side of that is good marketing helps a bad product fail even more quickly. Technology is like that. Technology is an amplifier, if you will. So if we take that same concept, apply it to technology, technology helps organizations that are healthy, teams that are healthy, collaborate better and execute more quickly. But with technology being an amplifier, it also takes those teams that have the issues of collaboration and execution and just kind of those underlying cultural issues that Jeff alluded to a little earlier, amplifies those, so the problem gets even worse. And our tendency is to blame the technology or the company that sold it to us. Drop in the chat if you've been one of those companies that got blamed for that, or drop in the chat if you have experienced this scenario in your organization. One of the things we don't really stop to look at is when we get the application, the technology, we are installing it on an operating system. Now, in this case, I'm not talking about an operating system like Windows or Macintosh or even Linux and Ubuntu. I'm talking about the organizational operating system that we've been alluding to all along. Our natural tendency is not to stop and look at that operating system. So as we kind of reset the room and to move into the next part of our presentation today, I'd like for us to stop and kind of evaluate and ask ourselves, is the cultural operating system that we have in our organizations today, is it like a Macintosh or Windows XP? Or is the operating system that we have in place really powerful enough and intentional enough to set our people, our teams, and our organization up for success in the digital age?
The organizational identity at the center of that framework, vision, mission, values with goals, rhythms, and people systems built around it, is not a diagram you hang on the wall. It's the architecture that determines whether everything else you build will actually hold. We have one final episode in this series where I will share a story about stepping into a leadership role with no roadmap and figuring out how to build a system from scratch. And Dr. Tom Niebel will name the tensions that keep even well-intentioned leaders stuck, leading people who never asked to be led and navigating the line between being supportive and being demanding. Episode 3 comes soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Leaders Rising Network podcast. Connect with us on LinkedIn or visit online at leadersrisingnetwork.com.